Early on in 1945, the resistance had repeatedly asked the British to bomb the Gestapo HQ at the Shell House in Copenhagen. The RAF hesitated. Captured members of the resistance were kept under the roof as human shields. However, in March, Gestapo were so close to unraveling the resistance that a decision was made to attack. 3 women cheerfully dress up for a wedding and greet their taxi driver with kisses. As he drives along the dirt road, he sees dirt rising in the air behind them and feels the pounding of bullets raining down. Seconds before they are all killed, a boy named Henry is traveling with his bicycle when he witnesses the plane fly overhead and turns back to see what damage was done. He is disturbed and traumatized to see the pulverized people. A red-headed man approaches a Nazi collaborator named Frederick at work to tell him 2 men came by his place. He asks if he can stay with him for a while, and Frederick absolutely refuses. He tells him to go to the Shell House and that he'll meet him there later. Before leaving, the man pays Frederick the $10 debt he owes him and says goodbye. At home, Frederick's father questions what he's doing with his life, calling him a HIPO pig, a traitor, and no son of his. He leaves the table, but his father follows and starts a fight. A girl named Greta sings a song next to her Nazi father as they ride in the back of a car. A girl named Davis sings a song as well, while she walks beside her mother and infant sibling. A man spots the red-headed target while he walks down the street and gives chase. He's stopped at gunpoint right in front of Ava. Hay is shot in the head. Seconds after the event, Greta spots her school friend Ava and tries to wave hello, but Eva's mother is shielding her eyes. People say the man was shot down for being a snitch that knew too much. Henry's mother warns him he'll be late, but he hesitates to walk. He works up the nerve to run to the closest tree. In the doctor's office, his mother mentions that his voice is all but gone, so the doctor tries to get him to speak. Henry tries explaining what he saw while traveling with his bicycle and eggs. The doctor can't understand a single word, so he loses his patience and screams at him, claiming some children benefit from being scared stiff. But it doesn't work. His mother says they are going to stay with her sister in Copenhagen because there isn't much open sky, which is mainly what he's afraid of. A pilot tells his friend a funny story when they are stopped for an urgent briefing. Major Truelson of the Danish SO brings up a mission they went on just a short while ago, with 2 other pilots that claimed to have hit a German staff vehicle. It turns out they didn't shoot down what they thought. They hit a taxi driver with 3 young women on their way to a wedding. The men simply urged them to be more careful next time. The pilots are haunted by the mistake. A man is being questioned, but he swears he isn't working with any of these men. Since he refuses to answer any questions, he is punished. Meanwhile, Sister Teresa is flogging herself at the Institut Jeanne d'Arc, a French-language Roman Catholic school. The other nuns talk about her and laugh. When she's questioned about her behavior, she claims she's searching for God. The prioress says that God is everywhere and he loves us, but he doesn't care about our pain. Sister Teresa asks about the Jews, the children that are being bombed in London and Berlin, and the ones that are taken into camps and killed. The prioress says that God knows more about these situations, but he's inside all of us, comforting us through the things we must face. Henry is moved into his aunt's house and approached by Rigmore, his cousin. She asks him if he won't speak because of the burning people he saw in the car. He doesn't say anything, so Rigmore tells him about the bear that loves hugs. His mom says goodbye to him and tells him she'll see him in a month. She reminds him to say something and assures him he'll be happy there. His cousin comforts him. Operation Carthage is the name of their most risky mission yet. To avoid radar, they will be flying at roof altitude, aiming to hit the Gestapo headquarters at the Shell House, to destroy their archives and as many Huns as possible. They will divide into 3 groups, striking late in the morning, hoping for the highest kill ratio. The Gestapo is expecting them, so they've positioned 30 prisoners of the Danish resistance immediately below the roof to serve as a form of human shield. They're so dangerously close to eliminating the resistance that they must follow through, even if it means the death of their comrades. Sacrifice the few to save the many. The cousins work together to steal the clothesline and head off to school. Rigmore says Ava can still speak, even though she saw a man get shot in the head. After proving it, they tell him to speak. He struggles to voice anything. He can only whimper and cry. She suggests that maybe he has a lump in his throat that could be remedied with a bun from the bakery. The only problem is the pig lady that lives inside, and inside her lives the witch of death. You should never look her in the eye, and on top of that, the buns are poisoned. Once they get the bun, they can apply the antidote. They pull him along on the clothesline to cross a wide road with lots of sky. They congratulate him for making it, and say he'll do it without the line tomorrow. He's about to eat the bun when they remind him he must dip it in holy water 3 times and present it to Jesus before eating it, to remove any curses. On the way to excursion time, Sister Teresa witnesses a man get taken into custody and beaten. Sister Teresa stares in dismay, and she is approached by Frederick. She looks at the marks on his hands and tells him he is the devil, and unless he finds God, he'll burn in hell. 2 men brought to the shell house below the roof begin speaking through the wall. They realize they are the human shield, destined to die. One of the men was at the briefing where they made the decision to bomb, human shield or not. Every plane that flies overhead could bring death. Sister Teresa is followed on the way back to the church and ordered to stop. Her basket is searched and Frederick orders her to move along. She asks what he wants, and he asks what she meant when she said he was the devil, but then says it doesn't matter because he's a dead man anyway. She kisses him, in the hopes that if it's a scene, God will punish her. She's surprised she wasn't struck by lightning, and decides God doesn't exist. She takes his gun and tells him to move along. During the prioress teaching about bread turning into roses, Sister Teresa takes over and tries to explain the answer to Rigmore's question about miracles. She says that God can do anything, and he never sleeps, although sometimes things distract him. Since time is different for him than it is for us, he could be distracted for a really long time. Rigmore shares this teaching with her parents, expressing her worry that God is sleeping and could be for their entire lives. The children put on a play where Rigmore voices his lines for him, and she jokes about God being out for cigarettes. Frederick returns to Teresa and asks if she kissed him because he's the devil. She says yes, and he tells her he doesn't want to be that anymore. He asks her for help learning to pray. She leads him inside, and he attempts to ask forgiveness for his sins. He admits he can't read, so he repeats after Sister Teresa. Before repeating it again, he tells her that if she wants to kiss the devil, it should be in there. After their scuffle, she discovers blood on the statue of Jesus. She claims that he has spoken to them. Before he leaves, he apologizes for being a pig and she kisses him. He introduces himself as Frederick and she shuts him out. She looks at the metal she used to prick her finger for the blood of Jesus. Pilots take off, preparing to drop bombs on the shell house in Copenhagen. Ava has trouble eating her breakfast, and her father's story about a starving and dead child didn't help. They decide to buy another roll from the pig lady, taking care not to look her in the eye. Frederick comes to his senses and tells his parents, although he doesn't know how the Corps will react, he is quitting. His father embraces him, but warns him that once they are liberated, he's a dead man. Students practice for an upcoming play with the nuns as the planes grow closer to them. Eva's stomach hurts, and the nun pulls her aside to tell her she must eat her breakfast. She leaves for the bathroom, escorted by Henry. The sister tells Teresa today is her last day at the school, because what she did on her quest for God with the HIPO pig is despicable. Pilots lose control of their plane over a crowded residential street, crashing into the Catholic Institute. A few bombs are dropped on the shell house, starting the 30-second countdown to explosion. A prisoner in the attic escapes, along with others. A large-scale evacuation of Jean d'Arc begins, but for many, it is too late. Bombers are mistakenly headed for the Tower of Smoke where the pilots accidentally crashed. Teresa escorts Rigmore, Greta, and many other children to shelter in the basement of the building. Some of the pilots start to notice that others have bombed the wrong building. Ava and Henry escape the building, but upon seeing the planes, Henry goes back inside. After the massive explosions, nuns and children come stumbling out of the ruins. Parents arrive on the scene to help and search for the children. Teresa calls for Rigmore and Greta, but only Rigmore responds. At ground level, rescue is underway. Henry has survived the bombing. An officer asks him to write down descriptions of the survivors and where they're sent. He finds his voice and begins recording victims. Teresa talks to Rigmor, who says she's face down and there's water filling in around her. Teresa screams for help. Frederick ventures into the crumbling structure, closer to the trapped victims. Parents gather in the theater to wait for Henry's victim information. Teresa and Rigmor hear the rescuers approaching. Rigmor says the water is rising, and it's nearly to her mouth now. The rising water sends Frederick back to the surface to tell others about the problem. The woman on the stage asks Henry to read his notes, and his voice grows more each time. He finds his aunt and tells her he hasn't seen Rigmor yet. Rigmor asks Teresa if she believes God has dropped a pencil, and Teresa tells her that he has, but they will meet Jesus in heaven. The rescuers are told about the rising water and give Frederick a vacuum to help suck it up. Teresa tries to tell Rigmor about the vacuum, but she doesn't respond. Frederick finds Teresa just before she dives deeper for Rigmor, and they are all buried alive by falling debris. Eva's father feels deep remorse for yelling at her and saying she would die if she didn't eat. Eva's mom steps out for a cigarette, and she stops Henry to ask if he's seen Eva. He tells her she left just before the major explosions. The mother races home to find her daughter sitting at the table, eating her porridge.